There are bands that define a generation. Their songs become part of our memory, the soundtrack to moments we'll never forget. Toto was one of those bands, formed by some of the most talented and technically perfect musicians to ever exist. With unquestionable talent, they created some of the greatest hits of all time. But the true story of Toto isn't really about music, it's about family. More specifically, about three brothers and a kind of curse that haunted them at the height of their success. Behind the flawless melodies lies the tragic saga of the Porcaro brothers, one who died suddenly and under controversial circumstances at just 38, another who was consumed by a cruel, degenerative disease before the eyes of the public, and a third one who survived to carry the weight of it all. The greatest stories in music history are right here on Suggest. We've already made videos about Aha, Foreigner, Europe, Tears for Fears, and many more. I'll leave a list with all of them in the first pinned comment. Now come with me to explore the rise, the fall, and the incredible resilience of Toto. The story of Toto doesn't begin in a dusty garage with a group of dream-filled teenagers. It begins with the most expensive and prestigious recording studios of Los Angeles in 1977. The core of the band was formed by the keyboardist David Paich, son of the renowned arranger Marty Paich, and the drummer Jeff Porcaro, son of the acclaimed percussionist Joe Porcaro. Friends since high school, they became the most sought-after rhythm section in the city. They were part of the A-Team, the musicians the world's biggest artists called when they needed perfection. Before Toto even existed, David and Jeff had already played on numerous famous recordings, including albums by Boz Scaggs, Steely Dan, Elton John, and Barbra Streisand. The desire to have their own band grew while they were on tour with Boz Scaggs. They realized that their collaboration with the keyboardist Steve Porcaro, Jeff's brother, and the guitarist Steve Lukather was seamless. That's how the group was born, soon joined by the bassist Dave Hungate and the vocalist Bobby Kimball, forming the legendary original lineup. With the band assembled, only one thing was missing: a name, and the explanation behind Toto is confusing. Some say Jeff Porcaro simply wrote the word Toto on demo tapes to tell them apart from other bands' material in the studio. In an interview, Bobby Kimball claimed it was a nod to the dog from The Wizard of Oz. Dave Hungate, on the other hand, said the name came from the Latin expression in toto, meaning comprehensive or whole. A fitting description for the band's genre-blending sound that fused rock, pop, jazz, funk, and soul. In truth, that mess surrounding the name already said a lot about the band. They were incredibly talented and professional, but they didn't take themselves too seriously. They had a playful side that many failed to see. Columbia Records, aware of the powerhouse lineup now united in one band, offered them a contract without even holding an audition. Their self-titled debut album, released in 1978, was an instant success, propelled by the hits Hold the Line, I'll Supply the Love, and Georgie Porgy. Toto's emergence from a group of elite studio musicians was both their greatest strength and their curse. In an era where punk and new wave valued raw, unpolished energy, Toto embodied the establishment. They were too perfect, too polished, and critics turned their greatest virtue, their technical mastery, into a weapon against them. Beyond dealing with snobbish critics, the band also faced inner turmoil, sibling rivalry. The soul of Toto was the Porcaro brothers. Jeff was indeed the leader, the eldest brother and most perfectionist. And in 1982, when the bassist Dave Hungate left, the third brother, Mike Porcaro, stepped in. Having three brothers in a band sounds like a beautiful story, but the reality was a boiling cauldron of resentment and tension. Steve later admitted, "I felt undervalued. Jeff and I were always at each other's throats. He described Jeff as a musical genius who expected the same level of perfection from everyone around him. When Steve didn't meet that standard, Jeff's frustration was relentless. It was a complex dynamic. Jeff could harshly criticize Steve to his face, yet Steve would hear stories of Jeff praising him behind his back. It was the classic case of sibling rivalry, but amplified by the pressure of being in a world-famous band. And that success was about to explode in a way no one could ever have predicted. After the success of their debut album, the next two releases, Hydra and Turning Back, were commercial disappointments. The band was hanging by a thread. The record label gave them an ultimatum. The next album had to be a massive hit, or it would be the end. Under all that all-or-nothing pressure, they created a masterpiece. Released in 1982, Toto 4 didn't just save their career, it turned them into global superstars. The album produced 3 top 10 singles: Rosanna, I Won't Hold You Back, and the most unlikely hit of all, Africa, which became their only #1 single.
Rosanna, Rosanna.
The lyrics of Africa aren't about a woman, but rather a man's love for a continent he had never visited. One night, David Paich watched a TV documentary showing the suffering and hardships of the African people. He later said, "It moved me and shocked me at the same time. I began to imagine how I would feel if I were there, and what I would do to help." The song's inspiration also came from David's childhood memories. He attended a Catholic school where many of his teachers had been missionaries in Africa. That's why the song tells the story of someone flying to meet a lonely missionary. And to describe the landscapes, like the Serengeti, he drew from photographs in National Geographic magazines. But the most amazing part of this story is that the song that would become Toto's greatest legacy almost got thrown away. Steve Lukather and Steve Porcaro once said the lyrics were kinda cheesy, especially the line about the Serengeti. Their focus was on Rosanna, but luckily they decided to include Africa on Toto 4. The band's crowning moment came at the 1983 Grammy Awards. Toto swept the ceremony, taking home 6 trophies, including the 2 biggest honors, Album of the Year and Record of the Year. They were on top of the world, but they still couldn't earn respect. Critics despised them. Rolling Stone described Toto 4 as about as real as a Velveeta-covered polyester suit. The Los Angeles Times slammed it for its discouraging lack of depth or boldness. The rejection was so intense that the band made an unprecedented move. Steve Lukather later revealed, "We're the only band in history to ever turn down the cover of Rolling Stone. We knew they were going to trash us." The moment of the band's greatest commercial triumph was also when their war with the press peaked, and the internal pressures began to crack the foundation of the group. The Toto 4 era was also the era of excess, and the industry's drug of choice was cocaine. Although Steve Lukather insisted that the band wasn't worse than most, he admitted that, thanks to lead singer Bobby Kimball, the drug had become their badge of honor. Bobby's addiction was spiraling out of control, and worse, it was damaging his voice. Steve Porcaro was blunt about the problem. The thing is, Bobby couldn't sing. We were all staying up all night. The next day, my throat would be wrecked, but I didn't have to sing. Bobby did, and he just wasn't delivering. In 1984, the band's members made the difficult decision to fire Bobby. To make matters worse, around the same time he was facing trial for a 1981 incident in which he had allegedly sold drugs to an undercover cop. Bobby's departure was a shock to fans and marked the beginning of the band's infamous revolving door of vocalists, a long search for identity that would last for years. First came Fergie Fredrickson, who recorded the Isolation 1984 album, but his stint was short-lived. Reports say he struggled to adapt to the band's meticulous studio recording process.
My heart you and I were a deadly combination.
Next was Joseph Williams, son of the composer John Williams, who took over vocals for Fahrenheit 1986 and the seventh one 1988. But he too left, worn out by touring and personal struggles. The lowest point came in 1990 when the label imposed the singer Jean-Michel Bryant, whose style and stage presence were so incompatible that the partnership became a disaster. The band that once seemed unstoppable now looked lost and in commercial decline, but they had no idea that the greatest storm of their lives was yet to come. If Toto ever had a leader, it was Jeff Porcaro. He was the drummer, the founder, the central figure, as Steve Lukather described him. On August 5, 1992, the unthinkable happened. Jeff died suddenly at the age of 38. The initial story was that Jeff had been in his backyard spraying pesticide on his plants when he suddenly fell ill and suffered a heart attack. The cause was attributed to an allergic reaction to the pesticide he had inhaled. But that story changed when the official report from the Los Angeles County coroner found no trace of pesticide in Jeff's body. Instead, it found traces of cocaine and ruled that his death had been caused by hardening of the arteries due to long-term drug use. His bandmates dispute that conclusion to this day. They found 1/100th of a microgram of cocaine in Jeff's blood. That's like 2 crystals on a matchstick. That's not going to give anyone a heart attack, believe me. Steve maintains that Jeff had a pre-existing heart condition and that the chemicals from the pesticide entered his bloodstream through his skin while he was smoking. Whatever the truth, the result was the same. The heart of the band had stopped beating. Steve and David Paich agreed that Toto was over, but the Porcaro brothers urged them to carry on, saying that's what Jeff would have wanted. They did move forward, but the band would never be the same again. With the English drummer Simon Phillips taking on what was arguably the toughest seat in rock, Toto entered a new chapter. Reluctantly, Steve Lukather stepped up as lead vocalist. It was a period of lower commercial success, but the band kept touring and recording, determined to keep the music alive. In a surprising twist in 1998, the original singer Bobby Kimball returned to the band, where he remained for nearly a decade. It seemed that, despite Jeff's immense loss, some sense of stability had finally been found. But the tragic story of the Porcaro brothers and their bandmates was far from over. In 2007, the bassist Mike Porcaro was forced to retire from touring due to growing weakness in his hands. The diagnosis was the worst imaginable: amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, a cruel and fatal degenerative disease that slowly shuts the body down. At the same time, the band itself was falling apart. In 2008, Steve Lukather announced the end of Toto. He was at rock bottom. "I was drinking myself to death, losing my marriage, my mother was dying," he confessed. It was a bad time. The band finally reunited in 2010, not for commercial reasons, but for a noble cause: to tour and raise money to help cover Mike's medical expenses. Yet the bad news kept coming. The third Porcaro brother, Steve, discovered he had a brain tumor. Thankfully benign, but the surgery left him deaf in his left ear. In 2014, the former vocalist Fergie Fredrickson passed away from cancer. And on March 15, 2015, after an 8-year battle, Mike Porcaro passed away. It seemed that a cloud of tragedy would follow them forever. While Toto was living through its darkest hours, something strange and wonderful was happening. On the internet, Africa was being reborn. The song exploded online, becoming a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Its sincerity and grand, soaring melody resonated with a whole new generation. The peak of this revival came in 2018, when a teenage fan launched an online campaign urging the alternative rock band Weezer to cover the song. after some hesitation, they did, and their version became Weezer's biggest hit in years. In a gesture of camaraderie, Toto responded with their own cover of Weezer's Hash Pipe. Suddenly, the band that critics had once dismissed as soulless was being celebrated by millions of young fans. The song that they had almost left off their most famous album had become their eternal legacy. It was the ultimate unintentional revenge. The audience, not the critics, had finally given them the validation they had always deserved. The story of Toto runs much deeper than just being the band that wrote Africa. They are musical architects who helped shape the sound of an entire era. They weren't soulless corporate rock. They were a band of brothers, a family that experienced the highest peaks of fame and the darkest depths of human loss. And they're still here, proving that while critics may get the first word, history and the audience will always have the last. Did you already know Toto's music? Were you familiar with their biggest hits? Leave your comment below. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end. I'll be back next week with another great story from the world of music.